The headline is AI is taking jobs.
Look, I've been in AI for 20 years now. I've ran some of the biggest AI programs in the world. AI is not going to take jobs in the way people imagine. What's going to happen is
that the bottleneck that we're not really talking about?
We're talking about the wrong things. We should live our life under 3 bubbles. The only way to survive and to thrive in this era of AI is to only stay in the first 2 bubbles. We will have AGI 100% by next year.
So roughly half of Gen Z use AI weekly, but at the same time, one of their most prevalent emotions is anger and anxiety. Why do you think that is? You're optimistic about AI. Why do you think there is that divide?
I think when you go to university and you go through the whole schooling system, you have this ingrained in you that one day you're going to work, you have a cool job. Sometimes, depending on what schools you go to, they'll also tell you can start a business. So I think once you go through all of that graft of going through education, being in debt, for going to university, you almost feel a little bit entitled that at the end of it, there's something waiting for you to kind of just justify that what you've done has been worth it. So that when you hear about AI taking jobs, and of course the media loves spreading negativity around AI, that's why I call it the A word. It's like a naughty word. Of course you're angry, right? Like you've just got yourself into a 30 grand debt. You've done your best to get the best grades possible, even if you used Claude to do all of your essays. And then at the end, nobody's hiring you. This year, I've been told and I've read that graduate jobs are down by 25% versus last year.
Yeah.
And last year was also down by 20 or 15%. So it's really hard to get a job if you're young and you have no skills, right?
So these graduate jobs that are disappearing, down 30% in the US, how much of that is actually because of AI? Like you're working in these big Fortune 500 companies. How much actually is a cause of AI that these jobs are not there anymore?
So it's actually nothing to do with AI. So what's happening is a bunch of CEOs at very large companies, they've been under a lot of pressure to provide promises to their shareholders or, the companies, the board, about these wonderful things they're going to do with AI. And they made these promises 3 years ago when ChatGPT exploded because they saw, that they were pressured to do so. And every time they would present something, and I've been in boardrooms where really cool plans are presented, and then the board goes, no, not ambitious enough. We need more. So a CEO could present, look, I'm going to make the company 30% better in the next 3 years. And the board goes, yeah, but we heard competitors making it 60% better. You need to go for more. So what's happened is, leaders of companies have been encouraged to constantly exaggerate what they can do with AI. It's come to the point now we're going to be 4 years in since ChatGPT launched, and they haven't done very much with it. So what's the only way you can go and make up for those lost promises is cut costs. And people are one of the top 2 things which are most expensive for companies. It's buildings, so fixed assets, so keeping up offices, rentals, and then people, right? Because people need to be paid pensions, healthcare plans, all kinds of things. So what a lot of CEOs are doing is they're firing people in order to make the financials still look attractive. And then they could say potentially it was because of AI or not. It's very hard to track, really what was the cause of the financials getting better. I'll give you an example. Oracle, they fired over 30,000 people a few months ago, but they had the best financial year ever. And they are a technology company, essentially. I would say a legacy kind of technology company. So it's really about, and look what happened to Meta as well. They spent a bunch of money on the metaverse that never materialized. Any CEO, in Mark Zuckerberg's position would have been fired, but lucky for him, he still owns a big piece of Meta. And then he needs to now spend money on AI because that's the next big thing. So what did he do? He fired a bunch of people to make the pot available to spend on AI. So it's not what people think. People are not losing their jobs or they're not having job opportunities because of AI. It's because of a lot of politics that happens in the boardroom that very few people get access to.
But isn't that indirectly AI taking the jobs? Not directly, but indirectly.
No, I think the first case I gave you as an example is really just about making the financials look good, right?
Good on paper.
Just good on paper.
Yeah.
Oh, this year our cost base got 8% better. Yeah, because you fired a bunch of people. It wasn't because you're deploying AI. But because they made promises that, the EBITDA or the profitability of the company will get better every 3 years because of whatever reasons they gave. Some of them gave reason to be AI. they had to make that happen. So the only way to make it happen is to fire people. But you have to remember, there's a massive problem with that on the midterm, right? So 3 to 5 years from now, if you don't have young people coming in to bring new life into the company, which are going to get promoted to middle managers and one of the leaders of the company, you're going to have a massive structural problem, right?
So there's no senior people anymore.
There's no people to take over,
No
the people who are retiring or leaving.
Yeah.
So it's a very short-termistic view on how to solve the problem with profitability, because you're supposed to be providing better numbers every year because of AI. So they're going to have to rehire those people later anyway. So it's just I'm running active campaigns on lazy leadership. Whenever I see a lazy leader, I'm absolutely scolding them, because I think as a leader, you have a responsibility to make sure your company does well, but also that you're doing good for the community. And my whole mission for the last 2 years, last year we managed to reach 30 million people on some education around AI. The whole point of that mission is to teach as many companies about how to use AI properly, so they can exist and thrive, so they can maintain jobs, so that there isn't anarchy when a bunch of people go, unemployed, right? I'm trying to avoid the unemployment scenario. And that's the whole reason why I've been, going all over social media and providing all of the publications I have and speeches, because I'm trying to teach as many companies as I can about AI and stopping this lazy leadership problem of just, let's find a short-term solution, let's fire people so we can still have good numbers. That's the most insane and irresponsible thing a leader can do.
What can be done to change that?
The stats are really clear. So Deloitte ran a study last year. It basically ended up saying that 79% of board members, so people that effectively run companies, they don't understand enough about AI in order to govern the companies that they're in. So you have these people at board level who are clueless about AI. They just, know what AI is based on what the media says and YouTube, etc., which is ridiculous. I mean, you got to go a little deeper into this topic that's so important. And then when you have leaders, advising the CEO, the CTO, the CIO on what to do with the company, but they don't understand AI, everything just falls over. So I think it all comes down to education, first of all. People have to educate themselves, especially if they're in a leadership position, because then they have to set the right strategy for the company around AI, and then execute on that. And the right strategy should always be two things. So use AI to create new revenue streams and new products and services, because you can do it very cheaply now. And two, improve the operational cost of the company by making it more efficient. And as you kind of change jobs within the company, place the people who are losing their jobs into these new revenue streams that you've created, so that you have a bit of a circular economy going around, right? And eventually you'll actually end up hiring more people than you actually needed before. So it's a positive, it's a win-win. The company does well, it makes money, it keeps people employed, it reskills people. And then for the economy, it's really great, right? Because you have people that have jobs, they can spend money, and the economy can exist.
Would you say that AI is overhyped? There's so many different opinions. Every podcast guest has a different opinion about AI.
Look, I've been in AI for 20 years now. I've ran some of the biggest AI programs in the world. I was in the team that was running the AI program for the 7th largest company in the world. That's the 5th largest AI program in the world overall, just under Google, Microsoft, and a few others. And what I can tell you categorically is that AI is not overhyped from the technology capability. By the end of this year, AI will get to 200 plus IQ. By summer next year, we will have AGI, which can do at least 40% of people's jobs, 500 IQ plus. So the technology itself is not overhyped. There is overhype in what the technology companies are promising. They always promise kind of 6 to 12 months too early. And the whole reason why that happened is because as soon as one company exaggerated their capabilities, which was OpenAI,
They just get loads of investment.
Well,
they need it.
Everyone has to.
Yeah, they need it in order to justify their expenditure. And we should go into the numbers, how much OpenAI is spending, the risk of them going bankrupt.
Yeah, I read something this morning actually on the tube. I can't remember the figures, but they're losing a lot of money, aren't they?
Yeah. So the overhype is not on the technology capability side. It's 100% there. We will have AGI 100% by next year. And we can define what AGI is if you want. But the bubble is actually coming from the AI companies themselves over-exaggerating what they can do in this present time They will get there eventually in all their promises, but they're overhyping because they need to justify the amount of money that they're raising. And when one AI company exaggerates, the other one has to exaggerate to keep up with the Joneses, right? And then it kind of just snowballs out of control. So I do believe that the AI market and the valuations of AI companies are overvalued by 30, maybe even 40%. And people will come to that realization soon. And it will kind of deflate a little bit. But it's not a bubble that's going to burst and go away and kind of, it's a fad and any of that stuff. No way. AI is really here to change the world in every aspect, in everything that we do. But it is a bit more colorful than it should be.
The big companies are pushed into doing that, giving that narrative.
Yeah.
For someone that doesn't know what AGI is, can you give us your definition of it?
Yeah. So last year I was with Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, and we had a bunch of other people from AI companies. And we were talking about this problem because AGI, so artificial general intelligence, and then ASI, artificial superintelligence, these are two terms that keep floating around, but nobody ever defines it, which is super irresponsible. So we ended up kind of trying to define it a little bit. So we landed on AGI being an AI technology that can remember everything it's ever read, and it's able to perfectly join concepts together around those things that it has read. And that's it. Nothing more, crazy than that. But if you think about it, we as humans, we actually can't remember much, at least not verbatim, right? We're not very good. Our memory is pretty crap, actually. And it's funny because people say AI hallucinates, but humans hallucinate at least 38% of the time. When we don't know the exact number, we round up or down, we kind of approximate. AI today, hallucinations are at 3% or less. And actually, one big myth we should bust right now is hallucination is actually not a bug, it's a feature. And the reason is that...
Can you just explain what hallucination is to someone
So
listening?
hallucination is when an AI system kind of invents stuff. You ask it to do something, it comes back with figures, and it sounds very convincing, but it's totally made up. It's actually not a bug, it is a feature. And I'll explain. When you have intelligence and you want to create new forms of intelligence, you need to have the highest form of intelligence, in my opinion, is imagination. So being able to imagine things or create things that have not existed. So in order for AI to reach AGI level of intelligence, which is superhuman intelligence, above human intelligence, you need to allow it to think outside the box. You need to allow it to have some sort of imagination. So that's why AI companies have allowed hallucinations to exist, because we need that in order to get to AGI, right? If you just told AI to just literally, regurgitate exactly what it's read, you're just going to have something which is just a box, right? We just created the box. We need to allow it to think outside the box and to imagine things. And that's how you get to true intelligence, by imagining new things, new concepts.
If AGI can imagine stuff, it's just a thought, but surely that will enforce a philosophical revolution in a way, because it's going to be what does it actually mean to be human if AI can imagine and has intelligence? Are we going to have a philosophical revolution as well?
100%. So ASI, which we didn't define yet, is artificial superintelligence. It's basically taking everything it's ever read, which AGI has, perfect memory, can join concepts together, but those are existing concepts. ASI then creates new concepts in maths and physics and biology, and is able to create new things that humans have not created, new knowledge. So ASI, I would say there is pockets of it that already exists. When Google DeepMind broke down the protein structures and was able to do that, in a fraction of the time that researchers could do it manually, I would argue that is a form of ASI. But true ASI, we kind of predict it's going to be 15 years from now. It could be that it happens a lot quicker because AGI will get us to ASI. But the way to think about it is kind of like traditional AI. Then you have Gen AI, which is what we have today with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc. We will have AGI by next year. And I would argue that we already have forms of AGI already, which is a super intelligence that can do anything a human can, remember everything. But again, it kind of regurgitates human concepts that have been created by humans. And then eventually we'll have ASI.
When we get to ASI, how do people reskill so that we're still we've got something to do in life?
So I want people to really question this question, right? Yeah. Reskill. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think when people talk about reskilling, they're still thinking about this concept of, I'm going to be an employee. I'm going to work for a company. I'm going to be an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me because we have to completely reimagine what we're going to do. Like you mentioned, what's the meaning of life? What are humans going to do? I think eventually after 20 years from now, we're going to get to a point where we're going to realize that, copying and pasting, doing mundane, mind-boggling, boring tasks as a robot, because that's what's happened. We've tried to create humans into robots, and we're not robots, right? We're just biological beings. We have limitations around our dexterity, our memory. We should be doing other things. And what is that thing? I think AI is going to force us to that more existential question. Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Because I think what's happened through things created by man, we've created economies. We've created this thing that we have to go to work. We have to pay taxes to governments. We have to do X, Y, and Z. And I think over time, as AI challenges what we do for work, it's going to force us to kind of start thinking, okay, if I didn't have to work as much, what would I do with my time? And my hope is that the answer is going to be, I'm going to help people. So young people helping elderly people, researchers helping find cures to diseases, scientists finding sources of infinite energy so that we can have abundance, astronauts, finding new planets and the things we can learn from that. I think once we create that economy where we are chasing things which are bigger than any company, bigger than any person, and we can point humanity towards these bigger goals, we will have zero unemployment because we'll need so many people to go after all these things that I mentioned that it's impossible to imagine a world with people hanging around doing nothing with these massive goals in front of us, right? Trying to find the meaning of life is a massive pursuit. So we need AI, actually, in my opinion, in order to become more human. We need AI to take us off this rat wheel that we've been put on, which was really created by man in the first place to kind of control, right? To control humanity.
So you're optimistic about the sort of philosophical revolution that will happen?
Yeah, very much so. I think change is not easy. So I had this conversation with many people, Mo Gaudat recently, and he's slightly more aggressive than me on the timelines, but I believe we're going to go through a period of 5 to 8 years of absolute chaos. Companies adopting AI or not, or pretending to adopt it, firing people instead of using AI, going through all this lazy leadership nonsense, which has a short-termistic view on things. Governments not knowing how to regulate AI, because as soon as one government regulates it, all the AI companies in that country will just go to another country where there's no regulation. So it's tricky, right, to know what to do. So this will build an era of chaos for about 5 to 8 years, where then people and companies and society, communities adjust to all of that and then come to terms where they create new opportunities, new types of jobs, new types of companies. And then we'll start seeing a new era after that, which I call phase 2. So phase 1 is chaos, absolute chaos, anarchy, people going crazy. But I think with AI, it's going to condense all of that into a very chaotic 5 to 8 year window. Once we get over that hump and we kind of start understanding what is it we actually should be doing here, how can AI be positive, we're going to come into a second era, which is going to be around having to create a new world order. So Ray Dalio speaks a lot about this, although he's a lot more aggressive about his timelines. But basically, to explain phase 2, which is this new world order, we go to work, we pay taxes, we buy stuff, and that's what makes companies and governments and everything function. But 5 to 8 years from now, when humanoids, if I want a new bicycle, I can ask my humanoid to go and build it for me. I don't need to go to a shop to go buy it. Of course, I might have to buy the pieces or, whatever. But it's totally different economy to what it is today, where I just go to a shop. So I believe that once you come to a point where it doesn't make sense to go and buy stuff anymore, paying taxes is going to be very strange because every government is over leveraged right now. They have trillions of pounds, euros, dollars in debt. Eventually, all of that will collapse and we'll have to create a new economic system that works with keeping in mind that we can just make whatever we want whenever we want. Adidas is printing shoes for many years already. I can go and print a shoe right now if I wanted to. When I was at United Health Group, we were printing organs, simple organs. And I'm sure that, this year we'll be able to print hearts and other, major organs. So once you start being able to make and print whatever you want on demand, why do you need a shop anymore? why do you need the company to provide those goods for you anymore? So we're going to have to answer those questions. I don't know what the answer is, because I'm super focused on helping people through this period of chaos.
What do you think about UBI?
So universal basic income is where governments are handing out money to people who are unemployed.
Because I think Elon Musk has said
Yeah.
he sees that happening.
Look, I love Elon. I think he's a great guy. I've been lucky to be in meetings with him. Genius. But I think he's wrong about some of his predictions. And it sounds outrageous for me to say that because I'm not a trillionaire like he is. But Elon's famous for getting predictions wrong, right? He's never been right on a prediction, pretty much. I don't think universal basic income is a good thing, because as humans, we need a purpose. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the biggest things that Maslow talks about is having something to do, right? Which allows you to have a purpose. So for instance, if you're the provider of the house, you go out and you work, or you find work to do so that you can then buy food and provide shelter and safety for your family. If we don't have that, I think psychologically we will break down. And I think it will actually go against what we should be doing, which is using AI to find the meaning of life and what should we be doing on Earth, etc. And it's also not sustainable. If you look at every government on Earth, pretty much, they're all in debt. A good chunk of the economy is basically 20-30% of most companies are in debt. Yeah. So eventually, after a point where everybody owes everybody money, it doesn't make any more sense, right? So I don't think universal basic income is sustainable. It will actually come into force. I'm pretty sure it's going to increase as well. But after a couple of years, it's not going to make any sense anymore. You're basically paying for people not to do any work. That doesn't actually get us to the goal of finding out what's the meaning of life. We need people to be busy and to do things which are purposeful, and it gives them something to do which is meaningful.
But in a world where everyone's chasing that greater purpose, what does happen to the financial system?
Like I said, I think phase 2 is going to be about creating a new economic order, right? Creating a new economy, whatever that is. I'm not an economist, so I don't go into that. I'm trying to help people with phase 1, which is chaos, and trying to get companies to adopt AI in the right way. Thankfully, I've helped thousands of companies do that. I've saved, theoretically, millions of jobs. My job right now is to just cushion the blow in phase 1. Like, try to prolong that as long as we can, so we can find answers to what is this new economic order, and how do we use AI in a really positive way.
Let's go back to the numbers then. So how much are OpenAI and Anthropic actually losing every single month?
So, Anthropic is actually profitable for the first time this year. Yeah. OpenAI, unfortunately, is not profitable. And actually, a couple of weeks ago, there was a bit of a scandal around, their financials got leaked. And things don't look very good. They're spending billions on marketing, but no company spends billions on marketing. So that looks a little fishy, but I'm sure they have answers to it. I'm not going to say anything nefarious here. But basically, OpenAI has a commitment of about $660 billion until 2030. That's 4.5 years from now, or 3.5 years from now. And it means that they're going to be losing money from now into 2030 at the very best scenario. And I think no company can sustain, $500 billion in losses. Oh, did you know that only 5% of users for OpenAI actually pay to use OpenAI?
Crazy.
So they have 800. OpenAI is 800 to 1 billion users. It fluctuates now because of the models keep getting better. Their competitors are getting better. But only 5% of those 800 million users actually pay for OpenAI. So it's not a sustainable model, right? And also they've canceled a bunch of projects as well. They canceled the Stargate project in the UK to build data centers here. They've also canceled their video model, Sora. So they are finding ways to cut costs, but they still have a long way to go. I'm very deeply embedded in the private equity world, where it's very large institutional investors. And everybody that I talk to in the private equity world is very worried about OpenAI. But if you look at Trump and J.D. Vance and kind of things they've kind of been letting out in the last couple of weeks, they are alluding to the fact that they could control any AI company in the US, like they did with
Anthropic.
Yeah. Like they did with Anthropic, stopping them from using their latest model. So if OpenAI ever went bankrupt, I'm sure the US government would just swallow it up.
Well, one of the questions we got submitted on the Instagram was actually, does the UK have a chance of being an AI superpower? Because the obvious bottleneck would be energy, and our energy prices are maybe too high to ever be an AI power. So what do you make of that?
So to answer that question, I'll tell you a little story which is relevant. I was in China a couple of weeks ago because China and the US are really the only AI superpowers here. But China takes a very different stance on AI. They open source everything. So you can just go and take it and tweak it and make whatever you want out of it. And what I saw is that the US spends 23 times more than China on AI. But the frontier models from the US are only 2.7% better than the models from China. So imagine if you spend 23 times more than a competitor on something, but you're only less than 3% better. You know, if you're an investor, you'd be super unhappy. Yeah. Of course, that 3% matters when it comes to saving lives or very critical situations. You know, that improvement in performance can perhaps save somebody's life. But let's face it, not many things we do is life-saving. So when you look at the world and how companies operate and the mundane things that most companies do, you know, I think there's going to be a massive shift towards open source. And I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on these frontier models like, you know, Gemini, Anthropic, and OpenAI, where companies are going to start questioning, why am I paying so much more for something when I have it for free somewhere else? So that now brings us to the UK. Yeah. Funny story is that a lot of the researchers that actually created transformers and vectorization, which gave birth to generative AI, were actually discovered by British researchers. And Google DeepMind took that on, and then they started to think about how to commercialize it, and OpenAI spun out of Google DeepMind and went through Y Combinator. But it all actually stemmed out of the UK. So UK has one of the best research houses around AI, but UK is not very good at commercializing things. We don't have Silicon Valley to pump in as much money into projects as we want. I think the culture in the UK, you know, about being afraid to fail, you know, the fear of failing and the shame of failing, and we're all a bit too British. We don't want to ask for money. It's a bit rude. The US does a lot better in that. I know that the UK started a sovereign wealth fund, £500 million. You know, James Wise, Boardroom Capital started that with a few other people supporting him. £500 million is great, but it's a drop in the ocean when you look at the hundreds of billions being spent by the US and China. So I am actually quite worried about the UK. I don't see a lot of credible plans to make the UK a real powerhouse. And like you said, the energy costs are really high in the UK. There's a lot of systematic problems with AI becoming an AI superpower. You know, recently we saw Japan, you know, coming into the race now. So Japan is in the race for the AGI trophy. So let's see. You know, there's always hope.
Energy will be like Wall Street's, that will crash Wall Street's AI euphoria, was what one recent headline was saying. Like, is that the bottleneck that we're not really talking about? Like the transformers, all the energy behind the sort of unsexy infrastructure behind AI.
We're talking about the wrong things. Can I give everybody a tip?
Yeah.
Is this for listeners and for anyone? I think we should live our life under 3 bubbles. And you see where I'm going with this, so just bear with me. I think bubble 1 is, what do you have direct control over? So what do you eat? What do you do with your time? Who you hang out with? Etc. Right? Bubble number 2 is the things that you can influence. You can influence a friend of yours to go in and start using AI. You can influence a friend of yours to go and get a job. You can influence your community to not litter as much, right? But you can't control it. And then there's this third bubble, which is what's going to happen to data centers? Are AI companies going to have enough compute power? What's the government going to do? Who's the next prime minister of the UK, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the only way to survive and to thrive in this era of AI is to only stay in the first 2 bubbles. Like, for instance, I'm in AI, I'm building AI, I'm using AI at enormous amounts. I couldn't sleep for a couple of months because I kept drifting into this third bubble. What's going to happen to jobs? What is going to happen to companies? And I couldn't sleep. And the problem with that is it builds anxiety. And the definition of anxiety is the lack of control and inability to control the outcome of something. So if anybody is thinking about these existential questions about what's going to happen to AI, data centers, et cetera, but you have no control over that, why would you waste any brain power or any of your very precious time thinking about this third bubble? So only stick to bubble 1 and bubble 2. So should we not be talking about how people should be using AI to create companies?
Okay, so what could someone do then, like a young person? What could they do like right now to improve their chances of being successful?
So before you even think about what to do with AI, you have to do a couple of things. So the framework that I always followed, and the framework I'm teaching my kids or anybody else, is first one is these 3 bubbles. What can you actually directly control? What can you influence? And then everything else completely deleted from your minds. It doesn't exist. I don't even watch the news anymore for a couple of years, right? I don't watch the news. I don't care what competitors do. I just do what I think is right. So that's number one. So that will give you mind space, and it will give you an opportunity to actually have time to focus on the next stage. The next stage is, again, it's 3 bubbles, but this time it's a Venn diagram. So before you even figure out what you want to do with AI, you have to figure out what is it you like first, that you're good at. What do you like? What are you good at? The second thing is, what does the world need? So what problem are you trying to solve? And the third one is, how much time do you want to spend on that? If you can find a crossover between those 3 bubbles, something you're good at, something you like, something the world needs, a problem that needs to be solved, and you can dedicate significant time to maniacally focusing on just that, then you're going to come up with what is the 2 or 3 ideas that you have. With those 2 or 3 ideas, then you go and figure out how to make it happen with AI. Like I gave my son a challenge, for instance. He needs to start a company this year. He's 10. And the first thing he came to me with was, "Oh, Dad, I would love to have a bottle for me to have a shower, which is 3 bottles in one. And they're all kind of glued to each other. So I don't have to pick up 3 different bottles to shampoo my hair, to condition it, and then to wash my body with the shower gel. I want 1 bottle, and it has everything. And I just carry those 3 bottles around, and that's cool. When we travel, that's it. That's all I need." And I thought, oh, that's actually quite cool. But to go through the whole manufacturing process, find companies to go and make that new bottle that hasn't existed before, massive headache, to then get it into a market where potentially the margins are very low. So I'm now trying to steer him towards, okay, son, what are those 3 things? The 3 things that you're good at, the world needs, and you're going to spend time on. And let's focus on what can we build with AI? Because AI is super cheap. You can even get it for free for a certain amount of time. I think those 3 frameworks are the most important. If you follow those and only those, it is without doubt that eventually you're going to be very successful, and eventually you're going to build something with AI that is sustainable. It can be a lifestyle kind of company, or it can be a company one day that can make £100 million plus. But the most important thing is to get rid of clutter first.
Okay.
That's why the first framework
Focus
is
what
really
you can
important.
Control.
Yeah.
Do you focus on bubbles 1 and 2 on the first framework?
Yeah.
And then you follow the second framework,
Yeah.
but avoid physical products, you would say?
I would avoid physical products right now. Of course, maybe it's just my preference, right? Some people would love to make physical products. That's fine. I just think that making a physical product, it just takes so much time and energy, and you are relying on other suppliers and manufacturers to make it for you, and other companies to then sell it for you, to put it on the shelves of supermarkets, for instance. You have no control over that. So in the end of it, you have a business that you have very little control over how well it does. Whereas if you build a company with AI, you can build the whole damn thing yourself. You can control even the marketing strategy, the outreach strategy. You can control everything except for who's going to buy it, right? Nobody can control that. But you can heavily influence it with AI, right? By targeting certain types of clients with certain types of campaigns that you can build with AI. So today, I cannot think of an opportunity where you have more control over your destiny than building a company with AI. It is the best opportunity that we have today. It is the cheapest. It is the fastest to positive revenue. And it's also one of the best companies that you can then exit from as well. You can sell it to another company one day.
So past that step 1 of deciding what you want to do, how do you validate the idea as in it's going to make money, it's going to work? And at what point do you kill it off and say, okay, no, next one?
So you can take different approaches. My good friend Daniel Priestley obviously loves making waiting lists.
Yeah.
So obviously you market the hell out of it. You make it first, you make a prototype.
Harrison about waiting lists so much.
Talks about this a lot to me.
I like a waiting list.
Yeah, so you make a prototype, you market the hell out of it, you build as much noise as you can around it, you start a wait list. And if you hit a certain number, 500 people, 1,000 people, whatever is the right number you think is validating the idea, Then you go and make it happen and you sell it to maybe 10% of the people on the wait list. The other one is if you have a very strong conviction that you are genuinely solving a problem, you are very good at solving that problem. You have a speciality, you have a certain experience that gives you an edge in that area. I think even if it's not successful at first, even for the first year, I would actually continue on that journey because eventually it will be successful. I think I can think of a number of things that I've done that the first year or two, it was really not attractive at all. And if I had stopped, I've lost out on quite a lot of money that I ended up making with it today. And I see a lot of examples of that, even with good companies as well. It just takes time, right? I think one thing that we are diseased with right now is this constant dopamine hit we get from social media. Everything happens fast. Everybody makes $1 million in a month. Most of it is lies. I think there is nothing that is good that is built within a week or a month. Like everything takes 6 months plus, if not a year plus. And you just got to be patient, and you got to keep validating that, those three things are happening.
One thing you said to us before we went on air was like focusing on one thing. Yeah. It's very easy nowadays with AI to just launch things.
Well, I think Sam Altman says this a lot as well. Right now, if you have an idea for something and your market is like 1,000 people, at first you might be discouraged, thinking, "My God, even if I charged, £10, 1,000 people, I mean that's not a lot of money." But it's very likely that if 1,000 people have a problem today, that it will be 10,000 one day, 50,000. It will grow. And the great thing is you don't have as much competition as you would going into a market that already has a lot of people trying to solve a problem. So actually, if a market is small and you're super specific and niche about something, and you have patience to grow it over time and to become really the best at that one thing, I think you will eventually be successful.
You've said that a lot of companies, they deploy AI before they decide what it's actually going to look like in their organization. Let's say a young person they've launched a company. Now, what can they do within that company to make sure it's an AI first organization?
I think when you start from scratch, you can make a company, super run on AI. So, for instance, when I started my solar energy company called Certified Renewables, we're one of the fastest growing renewable energy companies now in the UK. We started it from scratch about 14 months ago. From scratch. When you start an energy company from scratch, you need to have, it's regulated markets. You need to get licenses, approvals. All of that takes 8 months before you can even make money. And it's a lot of costs, right, going out. But we started the company from scratch. We have our own system, completely run on AI. We have swarms of agents that work on those systems to do outreach. So we have email marketing agents. We have agents that sit on the website, agents that do WhatsApp messaging, SMS messaging, voicemail messaging, which has a really high open rate, 98%. We have another agent that then manages all those agents in order to convert cold leads into warm leads. And then our conversion rate went from 8% to over 30% because our salespeople only get warm leads now. So when you start a business from scratch, it's very easy to make it AI first. And then the system that we have also chases people for Google reviews. Nobody in the company has to chase anybody for reviews, which are very important. Because whenever you look up a company, look up their reviews. The system also chases people for payments. So we have nobody chasing for payments for cash recovery or anything like that. The system does it by itself. All the paperwork gets automatically sent to the buyer. So we have almost no admin work as a team. So we're a very slim team, really high revenue per FTE. And that's the beauty of starting a company from scratch as an AI first company. Yeah. If you're a large company, like 5,000 people plus, it's like a massive Titanic ship and they're trying to turn. It just takes years to do it.
So in a way, the small startups have an advantage.
Huge advantage. Huge. That's why I think that, and I'm already seeing this. I've seen people with two-man companies providing marketing services to Coca-Cola, doing all of their Christmas campaigns, and they beat WPP, which is the world's largest digital agency. They have hundreds of thousands of people. So we're seeing examples of 2 or 3 or 5 people companies competing with 1,000 plus people companies and beating them in RFPs, RFQs, getting deals. They usually do it for less money, of course, but they're winning, right? So it shows you that it doesn't really matter how big you are. You can compete if you have a good idea. You can compete with the big boys.
Where do the agents come from? Like, is it a software? How do you actually create an agent and deploy one?
So agents can be created if you literally go on OpenAI, ChatGPT, right, Anthropic, Claude, Gemini. You can actually say, "This is my business. This is the way I need to go and make revenue. This is my outreach." Or actually, even develop those strategies with the LLM model, and then go and ask it how to create an agent swarm that will cover all angles of sales and conversion in order to make those things happen. And even one thing we're introducing new as well is a marketing agent that produces all of our content, posts it for us, replies to messages, all of that. So you can go even further. You can go to the point of not just converting or warming up leads for sales, but even creating agent swarms for even doing the operations as well, such as marketing, etc.
Would you say it gets to a point where it's too AI? And I'll give you an example. Me and Tom get a lot of messages on the Instagram DMs, and
Yeah.
you can just look at it and you could be like, that is AI.
Yeah. So I think the art here is eventually everybody is going to have an AI company, right? It's going to be commoditized. So the art here is something called hyper-personalization. So, like 20 years ago, it would be super cool if you're part of a newsletter and it says, "Hi, Danilo." You go like, "Oh my God, it knows me. It knows my name." And it was like super cool, but 20 years ago. Today, the new version of that is you open up your Instagram, your TikTok, and you have an advert right in front of you that actually speaks to you. It says, "Hi, Danilo, I know you had a hard week this week. So this is why I'm suggesting you do X, Y, and Z." So the future of companies that will do the best are the ones that which are going to use hyper-personalization the best. So for instance, you get this message, it looks super robotic with a bunch of dashes in it.
Yeah.
It's so lazy, they even remove the dashes.
dashes.
So a company will do something slightly different. The smart ones will start hyper-personalizing it. If you're a bit younger, it's going to speak to you in a different language. It's maybe going to send you a meme first, just to get your attention, and then send you a message. And maybe not even send you a message on WhatsApp, or do it on Snapchat, right? So I think in the era of AI we have today, where everything is getting so cheap to use its services, the companies that will win were the ones that activate hyper-personalization the best. So I'm talking. So for instance, I have actually it's not announced yet. So bloody hell, I'll just announce it here. I'm starting a new department in my company. It's called AFM Creative Lab, Creative Studio. And I'm starting it with two other guys. One of them is the best in the world when it comes to marketing and AI, use of AI in marketing. His name is Simone Frehetti. He's got millions of followers, absolute genius. And what we're doing is we're going to show companies how to use the epiphany, the highest level of AI to create adverts. So for instance, we have a client right now that is going to launch a product, and it needs to launch a product, but it wants to do it in 12 countries. So what would happen today is that company would create an advert, maybe 3 adverts for 12 countries, and hoping that it's going to touch people's hearts and minds, that they're going to go buy the product. But instead, what we're showing them is we can actually industrialize creativity with AI now. We can go create 24 different adverts, maybe 36 different adverts for those 12 countries. In each country, we can have 3 different adverts, one for the younger generation, middle, and an older. And then one day, I think maybe next year, we're going to get to a point where every single person will have their own advert. So if a bank is launching a new type of banking account, they're going to be able to produce an advert for every single person, completely different from the other. And that's how you win in the future when AI is commoditized, is how you hyper-personalize the outreach and make people truly believe that you know what their problem is and you can truly solve it.
So way to get ahead today is just hyper-personalize everything.
Yeah. So for instance, I've got a podcast too. You guys have a podcast. Guest acquisition is quite difficult because there's loads of podcasts. Yeah. So how do we make it hyper-personalized? Whenever we reach out to someone, we always, of course, do research on their work. And when we make a pitch for them to become a guest on the podcast, we make it sound so much like it reaches their audience. It's touching their objectives. We truly understand what they're about, that they almost read the email, or sometimes we even do really cool videos for them, inviting them. They almost feel like we're speaking to them, like we truly understand their mission, and that appearing on our podcast is going to help them in their mission, right? So that's one example, right, where it's really helped us.
Got to cut through the noise.
Yeah. I mean, end of the day, we're all being bombarded by... And there's a white paper, I don't know if you guys heard it, it's called The Death of the Internet.
Yeah, well, I've seen podcasts about it
a
lot recently. I haven't actually listened to any, but I've seen lots of those titles appearing.
Yeah, so just to explain it for those who don't know, eventually more and more content on the internet is going to be created by agents and bots. It's kind of debatable what the number is right now, but it's roughly 12 to 14%, depending which platform you're on. But eventually we'll get to 50%, right? And once it crushes that threshold, everything you see, half of what you see is generated by a bot, or it's an avatar, it's not a real person. And the whole point of social media is to be able to create bond and follow people's, stories and dreams and also maybe, their downfall as well. People love that, unfortunately. But when you see half of it's not real, what's the point of social media anymore? Yeah. So communities are going to become a really big thing. So if you're starting an AI company and you want to go a little bit, not into building AI software, communities is probably the best thing you can go and build.
Stephen Bartlett actually did a study on LinkedIn, and he found that every single post that does well on LinkedIn is a unique human experience that AI cannot replicate. And I think my last probably four posts
were doing very well,
have been exactly that, and they've all done well.
Yeah. Every single one. Personal experience added into everything.
Because AI can't run an event, AI can't do these things. It's quite fascinating.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we'd love to talk to you for hours more. But yeah, thank you for coming on today. Just to wrap up, we've got a quick fire round. So when Roy Samuels came on, he said the most important skill you can learn today is sales. So if you're a young person, what's the most important skill they should be focusing on?
I would say that the most important skill for anyone today is the ability to prioritize and focus. That's why I gave you that first framework. It's about taking out the noise, worrying about things you cannot do anything about. Focus on what is it you actually genuinely care about and you can actually control and influence, nothing else. So I think prioritization and focus is the number one thing. Because if you don't know what to focus on, you're not going to eventually know what to then build to be able to sell. So selling is important, but it comes later once you have a very clear conviction about what you should be doing and why.
What are you most optimistic about AI?
I'm optimistic about it helping us find answers to existential questions like why are we here? Cures to diseases, infinite sources of energy. But I know it's going to come after a very long time because as humans we're very stubborn. We don't like change. And we try to, to stop it as much as we can, unfortunately. So it'll take a while, maybe take 20 years, but we will get there eventually.
And finally, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, give him one piece of advice, what would you say to him?
I have a very different experience as a 20-year-old. I came from very humble beginnings. I had to survive. I had to be responsible for a lot of people, and I was an employee for 15 years. So I had to pay bills and I had to survive. I didn't have the opportunity of somebody bankrolling me or anything like that. So I did what I had to do. If somebody is not in that situation and they do have a bit of support financial support from family or friends, I would give the advice to go and start a company. Find the answer to those 3 frameworks that I gave you and just go for it and try it out for 1 or 2 years. Way better than going to university. Don't go to university. Use the funds to start a company. And instead of going backpacking around the world, go and start a company. I think it's one of the best things you can do. There is nothing in life that teaches you more, about sales, finance, fundraising, than actually starting your own company.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.